This is F.D. Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening.
Hello, this is your host, Frank, and you're listening to F.D. Recovery. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. And this portion of the podcast is your weekly intention. Thank you guys to everybody listening. I really appreciate you guys tuning in every week. Let's see. So, the way the intention works, we pick a topic or spiritual principle, and what we do is we break it down, how it works in my recovery, and if I have somebody else on here, which today I don't. We tried to, but the work schedules were a little wonky. My wife couldn't make it, but so today we're going to do this alone, and we're going to go over last week's intention, which is goals. And this week for the new intention is discipline, right? But first, we're going to start off with goals. I really like doing this because, I go in to the rehab on Fridays, and I also, hit my other meeting that Project Heart, and then I also hit an NA meeting this week too, or last week, and so yeah, man, it's good because then I can have these things fresh in my head, and what I want to work on, so what I want to talk about, and it kind of becomes a theme in my life for that week. And I really enjoy going week to week, and it kind of gives me a sense of purpose. So that's a cool way of looking at this, right? So I encourage you, if you're listening to this, go along with us and with this FD recovery experience, and try to work these weekly intentions, these spiritual principles, right? And if it's a topic, just work on that topic for this week, right? Because it's not all hoity-toity, and it's not all positive. Sometimes we have to deal with things like denial, which will probably be a future podcast, but if I haven't done it already, I don't think I have, but we've done things like pride and ego, which isn't necessarily a spiritual principle, but it is something you have to work on, right? So we did things like grief, which isn't your typical, and if you don't know what a spiritual principle is, it's just kind of like things like integrity, compassion, faith, things that you work in your recovery to try to live the right life, work the principles instead of personalities getting in the way. So, right, that's why we put principles before personalities, because if we get lost in the who, what, when, and where, we can get led astray. That's when that ego and all that pops in, right? But when we break it down and just use these spiritual principles, we walk a more God-focused life. And when you're practicing things like this, you get a little less off course. We're human beings, and that's just how it goes, right? You gotta sometimes dig through the mud to get what you need to get, right? So the goals aspect, I'll keep it brief, right? But we'll let it lead where it goes. The goal aspect of my recovery is super important. I talked about it a little bit last week, but the way it kind of ran for me this week is I just paid a lot more attention to my daily goals, right? And also setting forward my 2-year goal, 5-year goal, right? And I got these things that I got planned in my head, and I was able to focus on them a little bit more, and but it also put awareness that maybe I haven't been setting enough goals for myself. So I just revamped my diet, and I'm already losing a couple pounds, and because that's a real goal for me, is just be lighter, eat less, move more, all these things, right? And I do a pretty good job on staying active, but there's there's results I want, and I ain't gonna get them unless I complete these goals and stick to the goals, right? And that is some of those things that I realized during this week, especially with goals, is creating new goals, right? Because you're gonna complete, like, I had a lot of these things kind of put forward in my recovery, things like housing, a good job, a little bit of money in the bank, car, wife, well, first it was a girlfriend, then it was a wife, right? You can't really get one without the other. Um, there's stepping stones, right? But the thing is I started hitting all these milestones, and the whole goal aspect is, it really brought it forward as also celebrating the wins, right? Sometimes we can get lost in the whole completing of a task, or the grit and grind of getting things done, and sometimes we forget to celebrate, right? Or celebrate the wins, right? Because in recovery, we could be very blessed, right? I know that some people aren't necessarily winning all the time, right? And I can't say I'm always winning, but that's why it's important when you get those wins to really celebrate them with the people you love, and show the people that are winning, in your life, and have completed those goals, to show them love and appreciation, right? And that's one thing I'm gonna continue in my recovery, is just try to stay conscious of this, cognizant of it, and just kind of bring it into my awareness, right? Because I lose sight of that really easy, and that's why I love doing this podcast, is so I can come on here and get real, and uncover to myself what I need to work on here in live time, right? And for me, it's like I talked about with my brothers in the recovery, and the recovery home, and talked to them about some of these goals, and man, some of the things that they were popping their hands up, and they were sharing their goals and their struggles, and just being a part of that, man, is just really fucking cool. Being able to spend a little bit of my time, and and they're in such a pivotal time in their recovery, in rehab is such a delicate time, and the odds are stacked against us, recovering addicts. I mean, I'm super blessed to be here, right? And I talked about it at a meeting, and it kind of hit me, and because sometimes I get lost in the perception of what I think others want to see me, or the way I want them to see me, or the way I think they see me, and all that crap. But it's like, I'm 100% on the road of redemption, right? It helps my recovery to understand that I'm in a spiritual debt, and I don't mean like a spiritual debt, like, oh my God, something's holding me, and I'm locked up. Nothing like that, man. I'm talking about, I owe my environment around me. I owe people in my life love and compassion, and um, I'm glad I came from the walk I came from, because I'm at a special understanding with my existence that I need to put forward good things. I need to fix a lot of the as much bad as I put out in the world is as much as good as I want to continue to put out in the world, and that's the balance that I'm trying to achieve in my life, right? So I like to talk about my recovery and redemption, right? I was a lost soul that did a lot of bad things, and now I'm coming into the light, and it's only from the grace of God that I'm able to walk this path and be of service to others. Some of my brothers that are close to me, they know how I am, and they know how real it can get with this recovery stuff. So we keep our tribe close, right? And so, going back to that whole redemption piece, and those the road of redemption right now is a sweet, sweet road. A lot of people at least I did. I viewed redemption as a negative thing, right? A payback of, the balance. It's an uneven balance scale, and redemption. And I'm such a bad person, and I'm just trying to walk a good path now. But I see it as a good thing now. That road of redemption is something else higher than me, holding me accountable, which is my higher power, and understanding that it knows everything I did, and I know everything I did, right? And so does my sponsor. And um, just coming in with that mindset, it's just a super humbling experience. I allow it to humble me instead of hold me captive, and understanding that I got to give back, right? And that's how my brain likes to flip it. It just feels so much more wholesome in my eyes when I can see that, from all this bad could come good. And if I just stick to this path and give some more of myself in a lot of situations where I do have an filled cup, that having the abundance mindset is super important today, because I was always living in scarcity in the past, and that's just not a vibe I want to be on anymore, right? And when I feel that fear coming in, just trying to take a deep breath and let it go, because you know there's a lot to be said at this spiritual path. If we keep on it, man, some of those things we struggle with will just dissipate, right, and disappear, because when you're on this path and you start healing and start giving yourself a chance, man. That was the biggest thing, is everybody was willing to give me chances, but I never was willing to take the bet on myself. And getting to that point where I'm willing to put all money on myself, it's on the roulette table, all on red, and put it on myself for once, instead of this imaginary BS that I've been investing all my time and effort at. This outside world, the drugs, the women, all the things that weren't fulfilling to my soul. I realized on the back end, once all that was said and done, and I walked the spiritual life and gave it over to my higher power, and understanding that I'm on the road of redemption. It's a humbling experience, right? Because we all have to answer to something. I don't care who you are, whether you believe in a higher power or what, or you believe in yourself. Either way, you're answering to something. You still got to communicate to something, right? And whether it's your higher self within you, or however you got to spin it to make yourself a part of that whole higher power experience. It's for me, my higher power holds me accountable, and that's what the whole road of redemption is for me. And that's a big goal for mine, right? Or a big goal, like tying it back into gold and finish up that. It's like my goal is redemption right now. And I don't see it as some of the negative aspects that I used to, right? I used to think redemption was such a bad thing, but I'm glad to be on this road of redemption, right? Because it isn't all butterflies and rainbows. That's just not how it is for me, right? It's a struggle at times, but I gotta understand, man. I made a lot of this bed that I'm laying in, and it's time for me to clean it up, and that's what the whole accountability factor to your higher power is, right? And so stepping away from goals. And the reason I chose the next one for this week for us to work is discipline, is because you can't really complete any of those goals, or really get anything you really want that is worth any of all keeping around, if you don't stick to it and to that discipline, right? And let's pop on old Schmitey's Google and see what discipline has to say. Right. Okay. Discipline. Right. Let's see. Let's click on that definition. All right. And this here, Google right here.
Discipline.
There's a little AI. The practice of training people to obey rules are a code of behavior. Oh, and another one, using punishment to correct disobedience, right? And that was the framework I had of discipline. That was the only part of it, right? Training people to obey rules and or code of behavior, using punishment to correct disobedience, right? Disobedience. Another one is a branch of knowledge, typically one studied in a higher education. Hmm. Train someone to obey rules, codes. Okay, let's see. All right, discipline. At its core, the practice of training oneself to work towards a goal or maintain a certain standard of behavior, often through self control and adherence to rules or principles. It's not just obedience or punishment, but rather about developing the ability to make choices that align with one's long term objectives, even when faced with immediate temptation or discomfort. Wow, that's important, right? Holy smokes. Because, you know, I was so used to that lifestyle, right? I was so used to it, right? Like I was used to the bad part of it, right? I was always getting in trouble, so there was always people trying to make me obey and kind of discipline me, right? And that just never worked for me. So I always had the bad rap of discipline. So I didn't want anything that came close to it, right? I always just thought it was an action that happened when you were being bad, or a consequence of when you were, slipping up, right? And um, let's see, building habits and consistency. Discipline enables the formation of positive habits and routines that lead to long-term success. It's about regularly following through on commitments, making consistent efforts, and persisting through difficult times. All right, cool. Right, so just these different looks on it, right? True meaning of discipline encompasses much more than just punishment. See, that's what I used to think, right? The whole punishment factor. It's about training, instructing, and the development of self-control and consistent positive behaviors, right? So, jumping back into that whole concept of daily discipline, right? That's something I lacked most of my life. The living skills, the hygiene, the making of the bed, the cleaning up after myself, and I've got pretty lackadaisical with that stuff because my wife is just so good to me, and she really takes care of me in so many ways, right? And she really spoils me. I've always been decently okay at that, but I've become a little bit lazy in those kind of ways because my wife has always just had my back, and I'm very blessed for her, right? She helps me in so many different ways because she knows how much I attack the day, and she knows what I do, and so she just tries to help me out so much, and so she was a big part of my discipline today. And it sounds kind of silly, but I really have to give it up. She makes my lunches, she does all these things for me that I really appreciate, and it allows me to focus on the stuff that I need to focus on during the day, whether it's my workouts, my diets. I work out a lot, and I'm in the gym constantly, and I'm super active at work. I pull loads, move product, do orders, manage a store, deal with employees, good and bad, and there's just a lot. There's just a lot on my plate when I work 12 to 14-hour days every single day, 70 to 80-hour weeks. Sometimes it's, it can get it can get pretty backed up, right, as far as spiritually. And that's, having my wife and having that support at home really helps out my discipline. And it really, honestly, it even links back to the goals. It's like having somebody in your life that's willing to that loves you so much that they're willing to care for you in all these ways. And it's, you know it's one of those things. Is just like being super appreciative of the way, you know I would love to just jump on here and say I'm just disciplined because I'm a badass, blah blah blah. But the reality is God has sent these people in my life, like my wife, my sponsor, all these people that really aid me in my success today. And I would have a heart. Yeah, I can do all that stuff, and I did it for most of my first part of my recovery, but that's not the point, right? All these things, I could have tried to do this steps on my own, all that crap, but all this stuff, we get to this place in recovery where we know we need other people's help, right? And a big part of my discipline and my success today is because a lot of the stuff that my wife does for me, even the small things, I recognize it when she puts out my clothes for the next day, and I was doing all that stuff on my own, but she helps me out so much, right? Just a shout out to her. I'm trying to get on her good side. So no, but no, for real though, if you have people in your life like that help you on this mission and this goal, right? And whether it be your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is, right? That, you know, buy them something nice, buy them flowers, take them out to dinner. Maybe not even buy them something, take them to the park, make them something, write them a poem, whatever the hell you got to do to show them you're appreciative, right? Because I'm just not, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't have the woman in my life. My daughter, both of my daughters, the people in my life and my recovery, and breaking it back down to that discipline stuff and having those people in my life that helped me out so much. It's really fostered the discipline I needed to find in myself, right? Those gems that, because I would have probably got all that on my own. I would have probably had a harder path to it, right? But God sent these people in my life that helped me out so much, like with step work. If I didn't have my sponsor in my life, I wouldn't even be close. He taught me this discipline as far as spiritual, and that helped transfer over to some of the physical stuff where, I'm trying to push big weight in the gym and, getting as healthy as I can and, getting my wind up when I do cardio and all that. And then tying that back into eating whole foods and trying not to eat processed foods I'm doing pretty good on that. And I haven't had candy in a long time. And when I do, it's a super treat, right? And I mean, shit, I was at 320 pounds at one point in my life. And I've had to turn that around big time. And, getting down to, 240 that I am now. And 230, 240, and it's like that's a big change, and to sustain that and keep that change, right? When I was overweight and all these different times of my life, it's you can get really down on yourself, and just being unhealthy on top of it doesn't help, right? So your mindset's screwed up from the imbalance of your body and your mind, right? And then you add drugs in the mix. I just was kind of like that for many years, right? So just having the discipline to keep the weight off, having the discipline to show up for yourself is super important. And also understanding that people in your life help you out so much, and to pay them homage, because if you have a wife, a girlfriend, or whoever's in your life, whether it be siblings, and they help you out, show them that you appreciate them, right? And whatever it is, it can be something as small as thank you, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but put that in your brain, right? Understand that you're not doing this alone, man. This whole discipline that I fostered today I've got to pay homage to the people in my life that allow me to do it, that help me out so much in my life, and to make it easy for me to be the success I am today, and I wouldn't say easy like it's easy street, but man, my life would be much more difficult if I didn't have my loved ones in my life today. And just being super grateful for them, and and tying that back into discipline is super important, right? Because we can get on this whole trip with discipline and be like, yeah, I'm a badass, I'm a this, I'm a that, and that's my, there was different clarity when it came to different layers that came to discipline, right? It was first, I thought it was bad, and then it came into ego, and then now it's like, oh, I'm trying to get out of that ego and pride part of it, and just understand, man, I'm disciplined for the right reasons today. I want to be healthy. I got people in my life that help me keep on my path, right? And understanding that discipline is just an all grit and grind and, oh, you got to be a badass. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is parts in that where you have to connect to that animal side inside you, right? Especially when it comes to staying clean and getting clean and staying clean, right? Getting off that alcohol, that drugs, man. There's a certain grit you have to tap into, and marry it along with your higher power, because man, it's a tough one, right? And tying that in together is important. And it doesn't have to be some David Goggins or some super athlete 100-200 mile run. Discipline can be spiritual as well, right? And tapping into that whole spiritual discipline instead of, because I always thought it was a negative thing, and then it transformed to an ego thing, and trying to tap into it in a spiritual way is the most important goal for me right now with my whole discipline factor, is doing all these things and understanding that I have a purpose, and that purpose is higher than myself. My purpose is to serve other people, and the only way I'm going to be able to provide for my family and be the person I need to be as far as strength wise, and be that rock that I know that I am, and also have that softness within my heart to have that open heart, and be that person that isn't just calloused, right? And that's what it means to me when you're being a rock for somebody. Is hard enough they can land on, and be, you can be stable for them, but soft enough so it doesn't hurt when they land, right? So I don't know if any of that made sense, but the fact is factoring in discipline and coming from it like a spiritual approach is the most optimal way you can approach it, right? And it's not a cookie cutter scenario. What's working for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. I start off my day early, and just so I can get in around 3 or 4 in the morning, and before that I'm already working a couple hours. So I wake up super early, go to work, get what I need done, and then I run to the gym and smack it for a whole hour. And it's a savage hour too, so it's nothing. I'm dripped in sweat by the end of it all. And I got 55 minutes to get after it and burn like 500 calories, which I usually do. And if anybody's familiar with the time to calorie ratio, that's pretty damn good, right? So got to brag a little bit on some of my successes, right? And because we are talking about discipline, and I am proud of where I am today, and trying not to do that in a braggadocious way, but you got to toot your own horn sometimes. So, but getting to that, accomplishing these goals and knowing what your purpose is and picking your purpose, and it might change, so it's important for you to stay in tune with what's going on inside you, and find that forever flow, because it's going to move and ebb and flow and all that good shit. It's it's open for interpretation, right? It's life is a moving picture for sure. That's what I've learned, right? And so I think that's all I got, guys. Hope you guys liked it. Tune in, share, subscribe, all that. Maybe send this to somebody that's either struggling with finding discipline, or struggling with goals, or things like that. Maybe this will help them. Again, this is Frank with F.D. Recovery, and this week's weekly intention is discipline. All right. Love you guys. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor, get connected to local support groups, and for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.